Have you ever felt that, despite being aware, despite thinking deeply, despite understanding people and situations better than most, you still fall into the same painful patterns? You overthink, you react, you chase, you seek, you conform, not because you're weak, not because you lack intelligence, but because nobody ever showed you where the traps were. Why do smart people, people who read, reflect, and grow, still find themselves stuck in cycles that quietly drain their energy, their peace, and their potential? Why does awareness alone never seem to be enough? If this resonates with you, you're not failing. You've simply never been given a map of the traps. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer spent his entire life studying the deepest sources of human suffering. What he discovered wasn't comfortable, but it was brutally honest. And honesty, even when it hurts, is the only thing that truly sets you free. Today, we're going to explore 5 psychological traps that most people walk into blindly. Traps that silently shape your decisions, your relationships, and your entire experience of life. Stay until the end, because trap number 5 is the one that even the most intelligent, self-aware people almost never recognize in themselves, until it's already cost them something irreplaceable. 1. The trap of needing to be understood. You explain yourself. Again. You rephrase your point, hoping it'll finally land. You walk away from conversations feeling drained, not because the topic was difficult, but because the need to be seen, to be validated, to be understood correctly, quietly, consumed you. Sound familiar? Here's what's really happening. Every time you adjust your words, soften your opinions, or over-explain your choices, you're handing the keys to your emotional state to someone else. You're making their perception of you more important than your own. And smart people fall into this trap more than anyone. Why? Because they care about truth. They care about being understood accurately. But that care, left unchecked, slowly becomes a prison. Because no one can fully understand you. And chasing that understanding is a game you'll always lose. Schopenhauer believed that the need for the approval and opinions of others was one of the deepest sources of human misery. He saw most social interaction as a performance, people endlessly seeking validation that never truly satisfies. 2. The trap of endless wanting. You set a goal, you work, you sacrifice, you finally get there. And for a brief moment, maybe 3 days, maybe a week, it feels like enough. Then it doesn't. A new desire appears, a bigger goal, a different version of success. The finish line quietly moves forward, and you move with it. The feeling of arrival never comes. The feeling of enough never comes. This isn't ambition. It's a trap disguised as ambition. The human mind is not built for satisfaction. It's built for wanting. The moment one desire is fulfilled, another rises immediately to take its place. It's a cycle with no natural end, and most people never step back far enough to even see it. Why? Because from the inside, it feels like drive. It feels like growth. It looks like you're always moving forward. But if you never feel at peace upon arrival, then you were never really moving toward what you thought you were. Schopenhauer placed this at the very center of human suffering. He believed that desire itself is the source of pain, not the absence of what you want, but the relentless act of wanting. The trap isn't failing to get what you want. The trap is believing that getting it will finally be enough. 3. The trap of meaningless noise. Think about your last week. How many conversations did you walk away from feeling genuinely energized? How many hours disappeared into complaints, gossip, or debates about things that won't matter in a month. You felt it, that quiet exhaustion afterward. Not the kind that comes from hard work, the kind that comes from spending real mental energy on nothing real. Every interaction you have either deposits something into you or withdraws something from you. Most people never audit this. They fill silence with noise out of habit, out of discomfort, out of the fear that stillness might mean something is wrong. Over time, this becomes invisible. The drain feels normal. The noise feels like connection. But it isn't connection. It's consumption. Why? Because depth requires silence. Creativity requires stillness. And every hour surrendered to meaningless noise is an hour stolen from the version of yourself you're trying to build. Schopenhauer was famously protective of his solitude. He believed that ordinary social noise was one of the greatest enemies of a thinking mind. Not because people are bad, but because shallow interaction is the natural enemy of depth. He once wrote that the more a person values their own inner world, the less they need from the outer one. 4. The trap of the herd. You took the safe career path because everyone said it was smart. You held back an opinion because no one else in the room had expressed it. You followed the trend. You wore the right things. You believed the right things. Not because you consciously chose to. Because the crowd moved, and you moved with it. This is the most invisible trap on this list. Because herd thinking doesn't feel like conformity. It doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like common sense. It feels like practicality. And that's precisely what makes it so dangerous. Smart people believe they think independently. And in many ways, they do. But even the sharpest minds carry invisible scripts, handed to them by society, family, and culture, that quietly dictate what is acceptable, what is possible, and what is worth wanting. Why? Because belonging feels safe. And the mind will choose the comfort of the group over the discomfort of independent thought almost every time, unless you deliberately and consciously choose otherwise. Schopenhauer had deep contempt for herd thinking. He believed that the majority is almost always wrong on matters of real depth, that a person who truly thinks for themselves must be willing to stand in a room full of certainty and still say, "I'm not sure that's true." 5. The trap of emotional reactivity. Someone says something. Maybe it was a casual remark. Maybe it was a deliberate dig. But something about it hits a nerve, and instantly your mind sharpens. It starts building the argument, replaying the moment, finding the exact words you should have said, constructing the perfect response to something that has already happened. An hour passes. You're still there, still in that conversation, still fighting it inside your head. The other person has completely moved on. You haven't. This is the trap that turns intelligence against itself. And it's the most dangerous one on this list. Because the smarter the mind, the more elaborate the story it builds around a wound. The more detailed the replay, the more convincing the case it makes for staying hurt. That isn't strength. That's a brilliant mind placed entirely in the service of the ego. Why? Because emotional reactivity doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like justice. It feels like you're simply refusing to let something go unaddressed. But what's actually happening is that you're giving someone else, often someone who has already forgotten the moment, total control over your internal state. Schopenhauer wrote that no one can truly hurt you without your own participation. That the pain of an insult, a betrayal, or a failure is not in the event itself. It's in the mind's refusal to release it. True intelligence, he believed, is not just mastery of information. It's mastery of this. the ability to observe a reaction without becoming it. So, should smart people simply accept these traps as part of being human? No, but they must learn to move through life differently. Here's what Schopenhauer's philosophy quietly teaches us. Awareness without action is just another form of sleep. Here are 5 principles to begin breaking free. 1. Stop explaining yourself to people who aren't ready to understand you. 2. Before chasing your next desire, ask yourself, is this truly mine, or was it handed to me? 3. Protect your silence the way you protect your most valuable time. 4. Question every belief the crowd gave you, especially the ones that feel the most obvious. 5. The next time something triggers you, pause. The reaction is never really about the moment. These aren't complicated rules, but they require something most people are unwilling to give: honest attention to their own patterns. Now, here's the final truth. Most people spend their entire lives believing that intelligence will protect them, that if they just think hard enough, read enough, understand enough, the traps won't apply to them. But intelligence without self-awareness is simply a sharper way to build your own cage. Smart people don't suffer less. They simply learn, slowly, painfully, and honestly, to stop being the ones who manufacture their own suffering. If this video resonated with you, it's probably because you recognized yourself in at least one of these traps. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. And these patterns run deeper than most people ever dare to look. The fact that you're here, watching this, asking these questions about yourself, that already separates you from the majority. Intelligence isn't immunity. Awareness isn't enough. Freedom is something you choose, one trap at a time. If you want more videos on the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer, the psychology of human behavior, deep personal development, and the invisible forces that quietly shape your decisions, subscribe now. Because understanding how your own mind works isn't just knowledge, it's the most powerful advantage you will ever have.